I've sat with this case for 3 months, and I keep returning to one detail nobody wants to discuss. The tape recorder. Room temperature, 52 degrees Fahrenheit. 2 priests, 1 young woman, 67 audio recordings. No doctor present. I'm looking at a photograph right now. Klingenberg am Main, West Germany. A stone house on a quiet street. The kind of cold that settles into old buildings and refuses to leave. Inside that house, in a small bedroom with a crucifix older than the girl who slept beneath it, something happened between September 1975 and July 1976 that the Catholic Church has never fully explained. Records indicate Anneliese Michel was 23 when she died. According to available documentation, she weighed 68 pounds. The official cause of death? Malnutrition and dehydration. That tells you nothing. That doesn't explain how a university student, intelligent, devout, surrounded by people who claim to love her, could starve to death in modern Germany while 2 ordained priests performed exorcism rites and her parents watched. I drove to Bavaria last fall. I stood outside that house. I listened to one of those recordings. What I heard keeps me from closing this file. The record shows this. Documents indicate Anneliese Michel was born September 24, 1952, in Leibelfing, West Germany. She grew up in a deeply Catholic household. According to available records, her parents, Joseph and Anna, were strict in their faith, the kind that shaped every corner of daily life. Church wasn't Sunday. Church was everything. By all accounts, Anneliese excelled academically. Records show she enrolled at the University of Würzburg to study education. She wanted to teach, but something had been wrong for years. According to medical records, in 1968, when Anneliese turned 16, she had her first seizure. She blacked out during class. Her body convulsed. When she woke, she remembered nothing. Doctors diagnosed temporal lobe epilepsy. They prescribed anticonvulsants. Documentation mentions Dilantin, later Tegretol. Standard treatment. The seizures continued. Here's what I couldn't find anywhere. A single neurologist who believed the medication worked. By 1970, available accounts indicate Anneliese reported something new. She said she saw faces during prayers, demonic faces. She heard voices telling her she was damned. She developed what her family described as an intense aversion to religious objects, crucifixes, holy water, sacred images. Her parents didn't take her back to the neurologist. They took her to a priest. According to church records, Father Ernst Alt listened to the family's concerns. He observed Anneliese over several months. In 1974, documents show he petitioned the Bishop of Würzburg for permission to perform an exorcism. The bishop refused. Not enough evidence. Father Alt didn't stop. He kept gathering testimony. He brought in another priest, Father Arnold Renz, a specialist in exorcism rites. They documented her behavior. They recorded her voice during episodes. Available records indicate that in September 1975, Bishop Joseph Stengel reversed his decision. He authorized the Ritual Romanum, the formal rite of exorcism, under one condition: absolute secrecy. No one outside the family and the priests could know. That authorization is what keeps me from closing this file. According to documentation, the exorcisms began September 24, 1975. They continued for 10 months. Records indicate 67 sessions, sometimes 1 per week, sometimes 2. I've read the transcripts. I've listened to segments of the recordings that surfaced after the trial. The voices on those tapes resist description. Anneliese, or whatever spoke through her, identified multiple entities. According to the priest's accounts, 6 in total. Reports list them as Lucifer, Cain, Judas Iscariot, Nero, a disgraced priest named Fleischmann, and Adolf Hitler. I'm going to be careful here. What I'm describing is either evidence of possession or evidence of a young woman in the grip of severe psychosis being told repeatedly by authority figures she trusted that demons lived inside her. The document in front of me says she stopped eating in spring 1976. Not because the demons commanded it. The priests didn't make that claim. She stopped because she believed her suffering would atone for wayward youth and apostate priests. She said this herself, on tape. Her knees were destroyed. Bone against wood, genuflecting hundreds of times per session. She tore ligaments. She bit through her own lip. And here's what I keep returning to. No one called a doctor. Not once during those 10 months did any adult in that house pick up a phone and say, "She needs medical attention." I called the Diocese of Würzburg. I wanted to understand the protocols. What oversight existed? What safeguards protected her? Who monitored Anneliese's physical health? No one answered. I sent 3 written requests. 2 went unanswered. The 3rd came back with a single line. The matter was adjudicated in 1978. The Church has no further comment. I tried another angle. I pulled the trial transcripts from court records in Aschaffenburg. In 1978, prosecutors charged both priests and both parents with negligent homicide. The prosecution's case was straightforward. This young woman needed psychiatric care. She needed hospitalization. She needed calories. Instead, she received Latin prayers and holy water while her body consumed itself. The defense argued faith. They argued that Anneliese chose this path, that she wanted to suffer, that her death would have spiritual meaning. How many doctors does it take before someone says stop? Anneliese had seen neurologists. She had prescriptions. The medical system knew she existed. But once the exorcisms began, her parents stopped taking her to appointments. The priests reported her condition to no one. The court convicted all 4 defendants. According to trial records, 6 months in prison, suspended. Probation, 6 months, for watching a woman starve. I sat with that for a long time. Around the midpoint of the exorcisms, late winter 1976, something shifted. The recordings from this period are the most disturbing. Anneliese's voice drops into registers that sound impossible. She speaks in what the priests claimed were ancient languages. She refers to herself in the plural. But there's another detail in the transcripts nobody discusses. She asked for help. Between the demonic voices, between the convulsions and the prayers and the Latin recitations, there are moments where Anneliese Michel sounds like exactly what she was. A frightened young woman who didn't understand what was happening to her body. On one recording, she says, in German, in her own voice, "I'm so afraid." Nobody stopped. The priests interpreted her fear as evidence that the demons were weakening. Her parents saw proof that God worked through her suffering. At what point does faith become complicity? By June 1976, Anneliese could no longer walk unassisted. She had developed pneumonia. Her body temperature fluctuated wildly. She refused water. The final exorcism session took place June 30th, 1976. The priests declared that they had expelled the demons. They told the family the ritual was complete. Anneliese Michel died the next morning, July 1st, 1976. The coroner listed the cause of death as severe dehydration and malnutrition, resulting from almost a year of semi-starvation while priests performed exorcism rites. She had been dead for hours before anyone called for help. I thought I had the shape of this, a credulous family. 2 priests operating without oversight, a young woman whose psychiatric illness was reframed as spiritual warfare. Then I found the photographs. I've read interviews with the surviving family. I've read statements from Father Alt, who died in 2020. None of them ever expressed doubt. None of them ever suggested that perhaps a different path could have saved her. Who decided this needed to be recorded? Those 67 tapes exist because the priests believed they were documenting something supernatural. They believed that one day those recordings would prove demons are real, that exorcism works, that faith conquers evil. What they actually documented was the systematic physical and psychological destruction of a young woman by the people who loved her most, and they kept the tape running the entire time. I've been over this 100 times. Here's where I land. Available psychiatric assessments suggest Anneliese Michel almost certainly suffered from a combination of temporal lobe epilepsy and severe psychiatric illness, most likely dissociative disorder or treatment-resistant psychosis. Her symptoms are textbook. The seizures, the visual disturbances, the auditory hallucinations, the religious fixation, the dissociative episodes where she spoke in voices other than her own. Modern psychiatrists who reviewed the case agree on this much, but the psychiatric diagnosis doesn't explain how every system designed to protect her failed simultaneously. The church had protocols. Everyone ignored them. The medical establishment had records. Everyone abandoned them. The legal system had an opportunity to hold people accountable. It handed them probation. I can't prove this, but I can't ignore it either. Anneliese Michel died because everyone around her agreed to believe something that let them stop treating her like a patient. Some argue she chose this, that she wanted to suffer, and therefore her suffering was legitimate. I've read those arguments. I find them insufficient. A 23-year-old woman in the grip of delusions she couldn't control, surrounded by authority figures reinforcing those delusions, does not have the capacity to choose starvation. That's not martyrdom. That's abandonment with religious justification. The Church, to its credit, has since tightened its exorcism protocols. Today, candidates must undergo thorough psychiatric evaluation. Medical professionals must be involved. Bishops must verify that all natural explanations have been exhausted. These reforms exist because of Anneliese Michel. That's not a comfort. That's an admission. I stood outside that house in Klingenberg for almost an hour. The street was quiet. The stone walls looked the same as they did in 1976. Someone planted flowers in the front garden. Ordinary life continues. Inside those walls, a young woman knelt until her knees shattered. She screamed until her voice broke. She starved until her heart stopped. And someone pressed record. I don't know what possessed Anneliese Michel. I'm not sure anyone does. But I know what killed her. Not demons, certainty. The priests were certain they were saving her soul. Her parents were certain they were honoring her wishes. The bishop was certain the ritual was justified. Everyone was certain. And Anneliese is dead. The recordings still exist. They've been copied and distributed across the internet. You can find them if you look. I don't recommend it. Not because of what you'll hear from the demons, because of what you'll hear in the silences between them. A girl, barely more than a child, asking someone, anyone, to help her. No one did. I've filed this case in the drawer I keep for questions I can't answer. It sits next to the others. Some nights, I take it out. I look at her photograph, the one from university, before the seizures took everything. She's smiling. She looks hopeful. I put it back. I close the drawer. The tape recorder is still running somewhere. It never stopped.